All right, everybody, welcome to episode 154 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I am with the co-host with the most, Drew at DR_PRA. Drew, how you doing, man?
Doing all right. A little under the weather, but glad to be here. Sorry I missed last week.
It's all good, man. This is what we're talking about. Drew comes in, he plays hurt. He don't care. He's going to get it done. We're going to have a great show. So let's cut out all of the pleasantries and go right into the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll start it off this week with a good, and it was a good week to be a Dallas Cowboys fan. Um, we look good everywhere. Offense, defense, special teams even look good. So a lot of players I could have picked from this game, but I am going to pick Tony
Mm.
Pollard. 14 for 131 and three touchdowns, and then a reception for 16 yards. And that's what we that's what we thought. We thought Tony Pollard was going to give you the bulk of his fantasy points in the receiving game, and he said, "I don't need receptions. I will run the ball. I will run for uh, almost 9.5 yards a carry, and will dominate a defense that had been playing pretty well the last few weeks. I mean, this wasn't a bad defense by any stretch, um, but Dallas looked great, and Tony Pollard, along with Dak Prescott, I think were the real catalysts on the offensive side of the ball. So, Drew, who do you have as your good for Week 8?
Man, so many good ones to pick from. Hard not to go with a guy like Derrick Henry, who had over 200 yards rushing, doing what we thought he would do. But I saw a stat on Twitter today that caught my eye. Did you know that Tua is on pace for 3,500 yards and 15 touchdowns to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle alone?
That's crazy. That
I mean,
is
that wide receiver duo, man. I was in a matchup where I had Tyreek and the other guy had Waddle, and it was just haymakers back and forth all day. But a good day to be a top end wide receiver, not to be outdone by AJ Brown, right? 3 touchdowns, but exciting to see. We'll talk about some of the moves here, but see the Dolphins going for it and some things coming together for them.
I I love that pick. Tua has shown what happens when a team kind of believes in you and a team gives you what you need to succeed. Um, Kind of looking at you, Chicago Bears, and we'll get into
Mm-hmm.
some trades later on, but that was kind of our whole gripe with Justin Fields right there in the offseason. You know, they weren't get you know they didn't bulk up the offensive line, they didn't bulk up the receiving core. They didn't do it in free agency, they didn't do it in the draft, and you know now in Justin Fields' defense, the last few weeks he's been playing a lot better. The offense has looked a lot better, but obviously, when you see what Miami did during the offseason, they already have Jalen Waddle, right? So what do? Well, they just trade for Tyreek Hill. You know what I mean? They they've been drafting offensive linemen forever, you know,
Yep.
to try to put protection about them, which by the way is what they should do. Doesn't matter how many of them you miss on, you need to hit on a couple to protect your assets there. So um they signed, how many running backs during the offseason, so they really made it a point to try to load Tua up as much as humanly possible. And obviously their faith in Tua has been rewarded. So I love that one. Um, Drew, I don't want you to get mad at me for uh, the bad here, but Gabe Davis, two receptions for 35 yards. And look, Gabe Davis is the ultimate kind of boom bust player, right? If if he sneaks behind a defender and gets one, or in some cases we've seen this year, two or three uh, deep bombs that he comes down with, he's going to be in the good category. But there's games like this where it just doesn't happen. You know, they played the Packers, and I'll be honest with you, the game was not as close as the score indicated, in my opinion. Um, but this is kind of the pros and cons of Gabe Davis. He's going to hit that. He's going to go, and if he catches that 60-yard bomb, boom, your day is made. But if he goes 2 for 35, it's bad. It's not what you
Not
were
what you
hoping.
expected.
Not what you were hoping for. So, what about you, Drew? What's your bet?
Yeah, I'm in a similar place with a guy that we thought would actually come on this year. I think a lot of the community thought that Cortland Sutton would be Russ's guy, that he would be the Tyler Lockett replacement. He'd be the guy to go up and get some of those moon balls. And 4 targets and 1 reception for 13 yards is not it. In a winning effort as well, where they don't have a stud running back anymore this season, so they've got to throw a little bit more. I think we all expected a little bit different. A lot of people made some significant moves for Sutton. A lot of people were moving off Judy to get to Sutton this summer. And then, of course, you have Greg Dulcich throw in there for a nice touchdown as well, which I know I was not as high as I should have been on him. I was still holding out hope for Alberto after Fant moved on, but more on that later.
Yeah, another good one. And it's funny because the beginning of the year that looked like the combo, right? That looked like, all right, we are, it's Russ to Cortland Sutton. Even the first few weeks where, it looked, the offense didn't look good, but that connection looked good. That's what I was trying to say. And then it kind of fell off, but the offense as a whole has just looked terrible. I mean, it's funny. I heard a podcast, and they were saying that if the Broncos would have lost, Nathaniel Hackett would have been left in London. They wouldn't have brought him back on the team plane. And who knows? That could be true. That could not be true. But they got, this is a problem. I don't even know what to say about this situation, because it should just be Russ, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. Yeah, okay. Javonte got injured, but Melvin Gordon, minus the fumbles, look fine. Then they got Latavius Murray, who actually seemed to overtake Melvin Gordon. And it's still just been like, you mentioned Greg Dulcich, who, has come on, but we thought Alberto could be a thing, because who's going to focus on Alberto when you have, all the weapons we mentioned earlier. And, now they have Dulcich. Like, it almost seemed like the biggest problem was going to be too many weapons. And it's just like, God, we're looking at these scores, and we're like, what are they doing? Like, I mean, do you see something? Let me ask you, do you see something with that offense that just makes you like, ugh? Like, I know what's wrong. because I can't figure it out.
No, I guess I don't know. Does this give you any more credit for Pete Carroll at this point for what he was able to get out of Russ in Seattle?
I mean, yes and no. And here's what I mean by that. I think we all sat here and said that Pete limited Russ's upside, right? Let Russ cook, right? Well, we were saying that last year and the year before and the year before. Let Russ cook. Let Russ cook. Oh my God, they got DK Metcalf. They got Tyler Lockett. Let Russ cook. And Pete was kind of like, I'm gonna let Russ boil some water, but the rest of the meal is going to be, good defense, a strong run game, and then every once in a while, kind of like Emerald, we'll let Russ go bam, and everything will be all right. And it was. Obviously, Russ got hurt last year. He had the hand injury, kind of similar to what Dak has this year. And I think they rushed him back. Kind of the opposite of what Dallas did. Dallas was like, you know what? Our backup is doing all right. And by the way, I think Geno Smith was doing fine last year. I mean, Geno Smith wasn't out there getting blown out. They didn't lose all of their games that Geno started. I think Geno was just fine last year. But I think in their head, and obviously the injuries happened at different times of the season between Dak and Russ. Dak was week 1. So you kind of were like, okay, we can figure out what we're going to be with Cooper Rush. Now, if Cooper Rush had lost 4 or 5 instead of winning 4 or 5, maybe you go, okay, let's rush Dak back as well. But it was a little bit later in the season. I think they were saying, all right, we need Russ back so we can make it to the playoffs. That didn't happen either. So in that respect, I think that's where Pete Carroll hurt Russ, where it was like, maybe you should just let the guy sit a little bit longer and then bring him back. But it's funny because talking about Geno's playing so well. And I said this last week when Bill was on. Shout out to Bill at Super Duper Flex. He was awesome last week. I said the Seahawks may be able to get a quarterback in the draft with Denver's pick, not their own pick, because right now they're leading the NFC West. They might actually be able to get that quarterback that they want. Now, maybe Geno plays so well that they use that pick on something totally different. But they could legitimately have like a top 10 pick via Denver.
Good feeling.
That's where they get their quarterback, where the whole time we were going, okay, these picks from Denver are going to be late. They're going to be in the late 20s, maybe even a little bit later than that, And now it's like, man, the script is flipped. So, yeah, I was just curious about what you thought about that, but that was a good little conversation. I appreciate that. All right, my ugly, right? It don't get much uglier than Davante Adams.
Mm.
The Raiders they get blanked, shut out, 0 points. How does a team with Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs, by the way he's been playing this season, how do they get shut out by anybody? I don't care if it's the best defensive team in the league. How do you get shut out? The best defensive team in the league is the Dallas Cowboys. And Justin Fields with Darnell Mooney and the tag team of David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert put 29 on that defense, which I think is the best in the league. You're telling me that against New Orleans, who, by the way, good defense, they're no slouches either. But you couldn't put a single point, a field goal, nothing. 0 points. Devontae goes 1 reception for 3 yards. And I get it. He was sick during the week, this and that. But let's face it, what do we always say? If you're on the field, we expect you to play. And Devontae Adams wasn't the only one that didn't do anything. But when you're the prize piece for a team that, by the way, made the playoffs last year, almost beat AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals in the first round. And this team looks like a dumpster fire. And honestly, I said this during the offseason last year. I have no idea why Rich Bisaccia, who had to take over after the whole John Gruden debacle, he didn't get that head coaching job. That team should have been what the team is doing this year. They should have been a mess. They should have been losing every game they were in. There should have been a bunch of infighting. And Rich Bisaccia took that team and they won games and made it to the playoffs. And then they were just like, nah, that's not good enough. I don't even know. I think he's like an assistant on Green Bay now or something. Like, he's not even a coordinator, which is insane to me.
It's wild.
But Devontae Adams, that's my dude. It was ugly. 1 reception, 3 yards. Gross. Drew, who's your ugly?
He's a polarizing guy, somebody that has kind of ridden the roller coaster of expectations. Did get the team the win. We mentioned earlier he rode the workhorse of Derrick Henry all game. But Malik Willis out here with 6 completions for 55 yards, which maybe he's not going to be a great ball thrower at this point. But could he get you some yards on the ground? And they let him go 5 times for 12 yards. Now, it was an ugly win is a win. But for first full start, I don't think Ryan Tannehill's job is in jeopardy at this point.
Yeah, like, wasn't this the wasn't this? It almost seemed like people were saying, "Okay, Ryan Tannehill's done." You know what I mean? Malik Willis is going to come in. Malik Willis is going to be that dude. But I sat here and thought, if Malik Willis had that type of upside 8 weeks into his rookie season, right? Why did every NFL team pass on him at least once? Some teams, a lot more than one time.
Yeah.
He went in the 3rd round. And normally, even quarterbacks with massive upside that are raw go earlier than the 3rd round.
When Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. But like, we can go back through time and just talk about like how, and now we're starting to see it a little bit more in the league, but like, how many 3rd round and later quarterbacks become long-term starters? Yes, Russ did it. Dak Prescott did it. And I'm just trying to, in my head, go through current starters. Obviously, there's, from further back, you can come up with more names, but it's not, obviously, Tom Brady, probably the greatest to ever do it. But, like, how often does that happen? I named 3 guys out of 32 current starters, and there's probably a couple more that I'm blanking on right now. And Tom Brady sat for a few years. Let's remember that. I mean, now he's the greatest of all time, but he sat for a few years.
Yeah.
Russ and Dak did do it in their rookie seasons. Dak was thrust into the spotlight because of injury to Tony Romo. Russ did it on ability because, let's face it, Matt Flynn and all the money he got paid was just not any good. Yeah. But we don't hear about this all the time because guess what? If any 3rd round quarterback could just come in and become the starter for a team, you wouldn't see quarterbacks drafted in the first couple rounds. They'd be like, I can get a guy in the 3rd and that'll be fine. it's the same thing we hear about running backs. I don't need to take a running back in the first because I can get a running back in the third, fourth round, and they can do the same thing. And we've seen that proven out. Um, hello, Tony Pollard. I'll bring it back. But that's not how it works with quarterbacks. Quarterbacks, they get drafted in the first round, maybe in the second round, if you get lucky. Shout out Jalen Hurts. But like third, fourth, fifth round quarterback, they don't do this very often. So people who were just like Malik Willis is taking that job. By the way, Ryan Tannehill, you can love him or hate him. He was drafted in the first round. and he was a guy who had played some wide receiver in college as well. And he was taken in the first, you know what I mean? We've seen guys with massive upside but raw tools get taken in that first round if people believe in them. The league did not believe in Malik Willis until the third round. They thought that's where his upside could be.
Yeah.
So
another notable fourth rounder, your boy, Kirk Cousins.
You know what? That's a shame on me. I knew that too. That was the same year RG3 got taken. Kirk Cousins, Michigan State. Shout out again to my boy Bill at Super Duper Flex. That's my fault. I take full blame for that. Just like friend of the show, Bobby Koch, had to call me out on my Kenny Galladay foolishness today, and it was foolishness. But I want to talk to Bobby though, because he said technically because what's his name, Kenny G. I actually called him Kenny P because that's how he's been playing this year. But he's missed 4 games, so technically, but me and Bobby are gonna work something out because guess what? I don't think he's missing games because he's hurt. I think he's missing games because they would rather pay him and have him sit home than actually even have him in the building. So we'll
how do I get that job?
Dude, tell me about it, especially for what he's getting paid. please. But that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to move to this chat question right here. So this is from Edward Zhang. Said, I just made a huge trade and was wondering who you guys think won. I gave Lamar, Fournette, Dalvin, and Mike Evans. That's a lot for Hurts, Swift, Waddle, and CD. This is full PPR, and he's already got Kamara. So he did let us know that this is redraft. But all right, let's break this down. I'm just going to go through it. Drew, you can think about this, and if you see something differently than I do, let me know. So Lamar or Hurts? I mean, I love Lamar, I really do, but it's got to be Hurts. Like that team. Now, unfortunately, you're going to get about 0.5 points in the second half from all of your Philadelphia Eagles fantasy players, but they score enough in the first half to make up for it. So give me Hurts on that one. Fournette or Swift? I mean, if I had to win a game this week, give me Fournette. But I mean, this seems like, and I'm just guessing here, Edward, you seem like a team that is winning games. So Swift gets healthy, and I think he's helping you in the home stretch as long as he stays healthy. Dalvin Cook or Waddle, you brought up the stat, the Tua stat. So give me Waddle all day. And then Mike Evans versus CeeDee Lamb. Listen, I know there's been exactly on the same page and blah, 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 but I'm still taking CeeDee Lamb. That Tampa Bay offense looks like a hot mess. But, Brady's got personal things going on, which I think is affecting his play. Plus, I mean, what is he, 46 now? I mean, that may be affecting his play as well. So yeah, I actually like every piece on the Hurts side better than every piece on the Lamar side. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you there. Full PPR, already got Kamara, sure. I mean, I agree. Fournette's probably the one the one guy that I would, probably prefer to keep out of that first grouping. But like you said, that Tampa offense is going to be, if they keep going on this trajectory, I don't know that Fournette gives a whole lot more effort. I don't know that they put up a lot of points. So yeah, I think it's pretty easy to go on that Hurts side. I mean, Hurts has shown, and what's crazy, he's not even doing it with his legs yet. Imagine we get to a game where he runs for 80 and a touchdown, along with throwing 2 or 3.
You know what though? I don't know if that game may not come, and this is no lie, for like another month when they play Dallas again.
Yeah.
Like they play Houston this week. They might be up 40 at halftime. And that's not even hyperbole. I mean, they're one of the best teams in the league. Houston is, if not the worst, one of the worst teams in the league. Like who's covering AJ Brown on the Texans? Who's covering Devonta Smith? Who's covering Dallas Goedert? Can they stop the run? I don't think so. And Miles Sanders has been playing well this year. I've never been a Miles Sanders guy, but he's been playing well this year.
Yeah.
So that could be a bloodbath early. The only thing that I could say I always say Thursday games are weird. Weird things happen on Thursday nights. By the way, talking about Thursday nights, just as a side note here, I heard the funniest thing on the podcast. Someone said it was great that the Monday night game dressed up as a Thursday night game for Halloween. I thought that was the funniest thing I had heard on a podcast all week.
Pretty good.
So, here, shout out to Jesse. Love Jesse. Hyperbole, nice vocabulary word, Josh. Yeah, I know a couple of $1 million words that I keep in this 10-cent head of mine. So,
yeah,
Edward, I'll bust them out.
Edward, you did good, man. You did good, Edward.
Yeah, I think that's a straight fleecing. Good for you. And I hope this puts you in the running for a championship this year. All right, Drew, let's talk about some of these trades, man. So first one here, it was the Bradley Chubb trade, but Chase Edmonds was involved in it, and that's what I want to talk about because I personally don't do IDP. I'm barely good enough to play with just one side of the ball, so I stick to that. Chase Edmonds goes to the Broncos. Now, this was kind of a big time. We talked about this earlier when we talked about Tua, about how Miami really went all out. They traded for Tyreek. Offensive lineman we talked about. They signed Teron Armstead, who was probably the biggest offensive line free agent in this year's offseason. And they signed Chase Edmonds, and we were like, whoa, all right, Chase Edmonds in the Mike McDaniel offense. Oh, damn, that's going to be fireworks, right? That's what we all thought. And then the season kind of started going, and then it was like, oh, less and less of Chase Edmonds. This is weird. And now it's mostly Raheem Mostert. What are we doing here? What's going on? So he gets traded to Denver. How do you feel about this? And you can come from any angle, redraft, dynasty. It doesn't matter. How do you feel about this?
The first thing that comes to mind for me with Chase Edmonds right now is if you do any investing, you're familiar with the greater fool principle. So I think Miami found their greater fool and capitalized. It is wild to see. I've seen Sports Center, people have been plastering this up all this week. What those firsts in the San Francisco trade have turned into for Miami. And
yeah, let's talk about that, please.
That is a master class right there in taking your Trey Lance value and in turning that into some amazing pieces to put yourself in a position to compete, which they have to go all out, just by virtue of the division that they're in, right? If they're going to compete with Buffalo, who is leading the NFL or second in the NFL in points per game right now, they're going to have to be able to score, and they're going to have to be able to do it with the offensive side. And then, a little bit of reinforcements. I mean, the Bills have seen the advantages of getting Von Miller this year, right? One more piece to add to the pass rush, to be able to add some veteran presence on the defensive side of the ball. So I think it was a great move for Miami. I think that was amazing. Again, we'll see how long Raheem Mostert stays upright. But altogether, Edmonds was not doing a spectacular job where, he's a tremendous loss to that offense. And you look at what their offense is doing, and this is without Gesicki even having, a huge role in that offense. So I think they're doing it well. So I think that was a great move for Miami.
So I love that you brought up the trade, because it's been all over. You said Sports Center. It's been all over Twitter. So the picks that Miami received for Trey Lance in the Trey Lance deal, they got Jalen Waddle, they got Tyreek Hill, and now they got Bradley Chubb. Now let's take Bradley Chubb out of it, because, like I said, we focus, on fantasy the way the majority of people play it. And I don't want to shame IDP people. They love what they do. And honestly, if I ever went on an IDP podcast, I would sound like an idiot. So I do not want to disrespect those people. But just think about this, right? You're sitting in your 2021 rookie draft, right? Where you at? 103, 104. It's probably about where Trey Lance was being taken. And Drew, you call me up and you go, listen, I will send you this pick. Know you love Trey Lance. All you have to do is give me what was Waddle? Probably the 109, 110 around that area.
Yeah, double digits.
Give me the 109, 110 and Tyreek Hill, and we'll call it a deal. I would have said to you, are you sure? You positive about that? You're going to give me a pick in this loaded draft and Tyreek Hill? I said, okay, do what you want, man. And the league probably would have started, you probably would have seen it on Twitter. This idiot traded Tyreek Hill and the pick that became Jalen Waddle for Trey Lance. And that happened in the real NFL. Plus they got a superior defensive talent using that other first round pick. Crazy. Chase Edmonds. God, there were a lot of places Chase Edmonds could have gone that we probably would have been like, okay, like this could be, kind of a snapback for Chase Edmonds. And he goes to Denver, where he's the third running back on that roster?
Yeah, it depends on the week.
I mean, I think Lat Murray is their one, and he should be, based on the way he's playing. But I think if Latavius Murray gets hurt tomorrow, I think it's right back to Melvin Gordon. I don't think they go, oh, we got Chase Edmonds now. Let's make him the workhorse back. I think it's probably more of a even-ish split between Melvin Gordon and Chase Edmonds, but they're not going, oh, Chase Edmonds is so he's like third. But I will say, obviously, Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon, and I also think Mike Boone. I know Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon for sure. Their contracts are up next year, so they'll both be free agents, and I think Mike Boone is out as well. So Javonte comes back. Chase Edmonds is a nice, secondary guy, but for this year, man, that trade does nothing for Chase Edmonds, man.
Yeah.
Like, it really does. Like, if Chase Edmonds gets traded to Atlanta, man, you throw your hands up. You go, all right, let's go. He's back. He's got some value. Let me see if I can trade him to somebody who has been a Chase Edmonds believer.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But unfortunately, it was to Denver. They've already been able to find running backs and do well with them. So we'll see. But here, let's take a break here. We got a question here from Trey S. Evening, gents. Full PPR. Start one. All right. AJ Dillon, Kyle Pitts, or Devonta Smith. Now, let's do that. Let's do that one first, and then we'll jump to the second part of this question. So, start one: AJ Dillon, Kyle Pitts, Devonta Smith. I'm gonna go Devonta Smith. I told you it might be 40-0 at halftime. The Texans are garbage. I also think, and we've seen this happen before in this season. It seems like a week where AJ Brown blows up, they kind of, they tell Devonta Smith, hey, your week is going to be next week. Don't worry about it. And they give him a few more targets than they normally do. So I think that's going to be more of the same this week, especially since, like, who's guarding him? Like, stop it, So give me Devonta Smith as the start. Agree, disagree, Drew?
Man, my gut says AJ Dillon going against the Lions could put up quite a bit of work there. If it was any kind of premium, I think Kyle Pitts would make the most sense here. I think Devonta Smith, if you're looking for the upside, then Smith makes the most sense. He could absolutely be the guy this week. So depending on what you're looking for, but I got a good feeling about Dillon this week against the Lions. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to get in there and spell Aaron Jones a little bit, and I think he'd get some meaningful touches.
Oh, interesting that you used the word upside with Devonta Smith. He's been pretty good this year. He's been pretty good. All right, here's another one. Also full PPR. Sit one. Oof, we got to sit one now. We're starting one, now we got to sit one. Michael Carter, Devin Singletary, or Tyler Boyd. Who are we sitting? Drew, I'll let you start this one off. Who are we sitting?
That's tough. I think you have to start Boyd while Chase is out.
Absolutely.
Hard not to play Singletary with the way he's been playing lately. He doesn't get a lot of red zone love, which is tough. So you're not going to get a lot of touchdown opportunities there. And Michael Carter. Ooh. Let's see. Who do the Bills play this week? They are playing. Oh, they're playing the Jets. Interesting. I probably sit Michael Carter. I think I roll with Singletary and Boyd. I think Singletary gets enough early down work. So yeah, and you can't sit Boyd at this point.
I'm with you 100%. You're starting Boyd. So obviously it brings it down to Singletary and Michael Carter. And it's burned me in the past, but I just never can bet against Devin Singletary. I can't do it because every time I bet against him, he sits on my bench and he puts up 15, 16, 18 points. And then I look foolish because I started someone like Michael Carter who gives me 7. Yeah. So give me Boyd, give me Singletary, sit Michael Carter. I'm a little bit worried about the Jets now that Breece Hall is done for the season. He was really the straw that stirred the drink there. And we kind of saw that obviously coaching staff said, all right, we got to put more of this into Zach Wilson's hands. And don't know if that's the way they're going to win games. And especially against the Bills. Let's face it, the Bills are, in my opinion, the best team top to bottom in the league.
Appreciate that, Josh.
What's that?
I appreciate that.
I mean, hey, I don't sit on here and lie. Even when I give you my opinion, when it's not popular, it is my opinion. I don't sugarcoat it for anybody. I think the Bills are the best team top to bottom in the league. And it's going to be a little scary trying to watch Zach Wilson navigate that. So I say start Smith, sit Carter. Drew says start Dillon, sit Carter. But we at least agree on the sit. Appreciate the question, Trey. We're going to get back into these trades here. And the next one, this was an interesting one. This is one where I went, wow, okay. Chase Claypool goes to the Chicago Bears. And the Bears give up their second-round pick. Now, they have 2 second-round picks because they got a second-round pick from the Ravens in a Roquan Smith trade. Obviously, we're not talking about that because, again, we don't really talk about the defensive side of the ball here. But they didn't give up the probably later pick, which will be the Ravens pick. They give up their earlier pick to get Chase Claypool. Let's talk about this from a fantasy point of view. I don't know. and here's the reason why. I hear a lot of people going, well, he's not in Pittsburgh anymore. So he's not going to battle with Deontay Johnson and George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris if he ever gets straight again. But are we listen, the Bears offense has looked good for the last few weeks, but they've looked good because they run the ball like crazy, including with their quarterback, Justin Fields. They haven't looked great because they've been prolific passing the ball. No one all of a sudden said that this is the greatest show on turf 2.0. With that's not what has happened. I mean, let me put this stat out here for you. Are you ready for this? Justin Fields has not thrown for 200 or more yards since October 9th. 200 or more yards. Come on, we're in the pass happy NFL. And he has not hit the 200-yard mark in almost a month.
It's not promising.
So do I think Chase Claypool will help? Absolutely, because you can, and trust me, I've never been a huge Chase Claypool guy, but he's better than Dante Pettis and N'Keal Harry and Equanimeous St. Brown. He's better than those guys. He is. But is he good enough to all of a sudden make this a decent passing offense? I'm not even going to say good. I'll say decent passing offense. I don't think so. I don't think, Now, I will, after I slammed the Bears earlier in the Tua discussion, I'll give them a little bit of credit. Like, this is kind of what you should be doing. And they'll have Claypool for 2 more years on a rookie contract, which is, price keeps the prices down. But man, giving up a second round pick for Chase Claypool, like that seems like a hefty price. But it ain't my assets. What do you think, Drew?
Yeah, I saw somebody put this up there too, equating it to dynasty, where you get the pick that the Steelers used to get Claypool, hold him for a little bit, and then trade him for a pick where they'll get somebody who would have been long gone by the time Claypool is an option, right? So again, savvy move there. I think that's what the Steelers do, right? They find and they develop good wide receivers, then they move on when the time is right. So yeah, I think it definitely helps Justin Fields. I think there were people this summer that were hoping something like this would happen, but I forget what it was. It wasn't a pick. It was some sort of player for player trade that a lot of Bears fans were hoping would transpire. I think somebody from defense, maybe something like that.
I
I
think
don't
it
know if it
was
was
I
like,
think it was Roquan Smith.
was it okay?
I think that
So
was what people were hoping for because Roquan Smith held out
yeah,
at the beginning of the uh, training camp.
yeah.
So I think that's what it was.
So yeah, so I think the Bears did the right thing. They saw what they've got. You know, Fields is not there yet as a passer, but giving him some help certainly is a step in the right direction. Yeah, he's a different player than Darnell Mooney and some of these speed guys. So if it's a bigger target that Fields needs to have that outlet or in the red zone, I think it's a good move. It's not a well advised move. If I saw this in a dynasty league, I'd definitely be scratching my head a little bit, but we'll see. Time will tell, right?
Time will tell. That'll be either the new Bears GM is going to look like a genius or he's going to look like an idiot. For making this trade, especially if you know say a top 8 wide receiver kind of falls and somebody that a lot of people, and listen, I'm not going to pretend to know this draft class like some Devi people do and some college people do, but you know there could be a guy that falls and we're like, oh my, they could have had this guy instead of Chase Claypool, and we'll see. But all right, here's the one I think was the biggest one for fantasy and maybe for actual NFL too of the day. The Detroit Lions send TJ Hawkinson to the Minnesota Vikings. So first of all, inter-division trade, which we don't see that often. We don't. And actually, the last big one that happened a couple of years ago at the draft, where the Cowboys and the Eagles traded picks. The Eagles ended up getting Devonta Smith, and the Cowboys ended up getting Micah Parsons. So that's probably the last big one, but they don't happen that often. And this was a big boy trade. So TJ Hawkinson, along with some picks, go to Minnesota, and Minnesota sends a couple of day 2 picks over the next couple years. I want you to start this one off. How do you feel about the Hawkinson going to the purple and gold of Minnesota?
I think it's good for him. I think he gets a nice upgrade in the total offense there, and he may get the ability to show off a little bit more of what he can do. R.I.P. Irv Smith. I think a lot of us were hoping that maybe he would bounce back this year, and he had a couple flashes, but it would have been nice to see him go back to Detroit to have some viability there. But yeah, I think for Hawkinson is a good move. I think it's a good move for Vikings. Again, seeing some teams go after it this year, saying we want to go all in. And this is what we hope to see in our leagues, right? This is, I think, why we have, whether you have a trade deadline, don't have a trade deadline, you're hoping to see some of that last middle of the season and toward the end of the season push to see some people go for it. So exciting move for sure. It'll be weird to see him there, and it'll be interesting to see him play against Detroit at some point.
Yeah, so we talk about fantasy here. Honestly, don't know why the Lions would do this from a reel. real football point of view, and I've seen some people give some reasons, but honestly, a lot of them are flimsy, even though they're trying to prop them up as real arguments on why Detroit gave up T.J. Hawkinson. Um, but man, the Lions are pros at drafting tight ends in like the first round and then trading them a few years later for pennies on the dollar. But let's talk about fantasy here. I I like this. I like this deal for TJ Hawkinson's fantasy value. I've actually heard a lot of people slam this for his fantasy value, but my thing is he's getting an upgrade at quarterback. He's getting an upgrade at the weapons around him, which means there's going to be a lot less focus on TJ Hawkinson. Justin Jefferson is better than anyone that Detroit has. Adam Thielen, he old, but in the red zone, you have to account for him.
Yep.
Dalvin Cook is very good, and as crazy as this is to say, he stays healthier than DeAndre Swift does. And obviously, they're also a better team in other places because let's face it, they're 6-1. The Lions are 1-6. So I like this. This might be a situation where the first couple of weeks of TJ Hawkinson for fantasy don't look good in Minnesota because he's getting acclimated to the offense. But I think, when you get to playoff time, you're going to be very happy with what TJ Hawkinson does. I mean, we saw Johnny Munt get a touchdown this week. If you could tell me anything about Johnny Munt, you're a professional. Because Johnny Munt is a guy. And now the guy is TJ Hawkinson, who's more than just a guy. So, yeah, I
think this is a lift
this.
for
Go
Minnesota
ahead.
overall.
Oh, yeah.
I like this a lot for Kirk Cousins. I like it if you have Dalvin Cook. I love it for Justin Jefferson. So, yeah, I think this is a good move for Minnesota, both in real life and for us that play the game about a game.
Exactly. All right, let's pull away. We got another question here from Blurpy. All right, so he just did this trade. He traded Terry, I'm assuming this is Terry McLaurin, Tyler Lockett, and Deonta Foreman for Derrick Henry. Is this fair or unfair? I don't think my answer is going to change, but Blurpy, if you could just put in here real quick if this is redraft or dynasty, it'd be cool. Sorry for taking that off the screen. So here's my thing. I think either way, it's an overpay, but it's fair. All right. Thank you, Blurpy. So he put in here redraft. I think it's an overpay, but it's fair. I mean, has Terry McLaurin been a top 15 guy this year? No, he has not. Tyler Lockett is heating up. Tyler, the funny part about this is Tyler Lockett may be the player at the end of the season you regret most losing in this deal. But Tyler Lockett, we've said this about him a lot. He's inconsistent. Yeah, he's going to give you some week where he blows up, and he's going to give you some weeks where he goes 2 for 20. And you're like, oh, why did I start? And Deonta Foreman, what's going to happen? Like he had a great game. He had a 3-touchdown game, just like Tony Pollard did. All this, blah, blah, blah. But what's going to happen when Chuba Hubbard comes back? Who knows what that split is going to look like? So do I think it's a slight overpay? I do think it's an overpay. But is it unfair? Absolutely not. I think this is a fine deal. And Blurby also put in here his running backs are now Cook, Kamara, Henry, and ETN. Man, how many of these guys can you start? Because
Hope
I
all of them.
mean, yeah, I mean, if this is kind of a normal league though, where you start two running backs and only have one flex spot, somebody's sitting. um, and then his wide receivers are
Two
Amon Ra.
flexes. Yep, so you can run all four of them.
Oh, I did not see that. Thank you for
Yep.
for pointing that out. Two flex.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hopefully
then
you
he
only have to
says-
start two wide receivers too.
Yeah, right. Because his wide receivers are Amon Ra, DeAndre Hopkins, Pittman, and Wandale. There's a lot of upside there, but there's also a lot of scariness there.
Less
But
scary now that Terry's gone.
what's that?
Less scary now that Terry's gone.
Yeah, less scary. But the guys who gave up are kind of the same thing, high upside, but
Yep.
can also put some single digit numbers on the board for you, which is what you're trying to avoid. So I mean, you got your four now. You got your two running backs and your two flexes every week.
Yeah.
Those are
like
going to be
it.
your guy. And then you rotate your wide receivers and see what happens. So yeah,
Yep.
Drew.
Cook and Henry are past their bye at this point. I mean, Henry coming off a 200-yard game, you're going to have to overpay a little bit for that. And yeah, I mean, I think, in an ideal world, you would have kept Terry and substituted somebody else out probably. But all things considered, I like it. Go get your guy. Well done.
Yeah, and you're obviously not going to say this is unfair, right?
No.
Yeah, I've seen way crazier trades than this.
Yep.
Here we go. We got another one here from the Cole Train.
Nice.
What order do you rank Slayton, Tony, and Pickens in standard? He's looking for that upside. All right, Drew. We'll let you start it off. What do you rank these three?
Oh God, I think it has to. For me, it has to go Pickens, Slayton, Tony.
Boom, 2 for 2. You ain't never gonna catch me saying anything nice about Kadarius Tony. So he's gonna be in third on most lists. And guess what? He's in Kansas City. Listen, if anybody can get it out of him, it's gonna be Andy Reid. But I said this at the time when he got drafted. I thought it was silly that he was taken as high as he was, considering, besides gadget and gimmick plays, I didn't see where he was going to be in the NFL. And I said that from the beginning. A lot of people call me crazy. And so far, he's had, one monster game in the NFL? And, maybe people are going to say, well, it's because he's been injured, he's been this or that. But Brian Dable it is said, hey, Richie James, guess what? You get that start. David Stills, you get that start. But Kadarius Tony, and now people are like, oh, it looks like Kadarius Tony wasn't even really hurt, So
yeah, I believe Dable's a culture guy, so that alone puts him in third.
I mean, I'll take it back to what we were saying earlier. I mean, Kenny G ain't around, and I don't think Kenny G's hurt. That might be the company line.
Yep.
But I don't think he's hurt. Kadarius Tony, same thing. The guy who complains after wins, you're exactly right. Brian Dable, he don't want none of that trash in his locker room. He says, yeah, you're going to complain. You're not going to contribute to the team. You're not going to, lift your guys up, even when maybe you're not at your best. Nah, you can pounce in. Here's a little follow-up from Blurpy. I like this. His league is saying it isn't fair, but the guy he traded with needs wide receivers. Terry and Lockett are wide receiver twos. Listen, I don't ever listen to what anybody says about any of my trades. By the way, I don't win every trade. I don't. But if someone says, wow, you really fleeced this guy, you really did this, you really did that, cool. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. And same when someone says, wow, you got fleeced, okay, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I don't know. But, I think if you ask the question, is this fair or unfair? It's most likely fair because I think we know when the unfair ones come out. When it's like,
Yep.
hey, I traded Derrick Henry for Zay Jones. Okay, wait a minute. That don't sound right. I don't care. Oh, but I need a wide receiver. I don't. You know you can do better. So, um, and then he also says he feels a trade without context is fair, but when you add him to my team, it becomes unfair. I view it that way. And listen, we haven't we seen it with this trade deadline? Good teams
Yep.
figure out ways to get better.
Yep.
They understand that they have more assets at their disposal than bad teams. Because guess what? Bad teams may have draft picks, but they don't have talented players that they can trade for depth or more talented players. Their players usually stink. That's why they're bad. You know, when we saw Buffalo make a trade. We saw Philly before the trade deadline make a trade. We saw the Cowboys make a trade. You know, and we see those teams. We just talked about Minnesota making a trade. Teams that believe they're good and believe they have a shot to get into the playoffs and do some damage. Those teams are making trades. They're trying to get better. They're not just saying, "Oh, well, we have a Justin Jefferson and a Dalvin Cook." Let's not add any more good players. We have enough. You know, the Bills, didn't say, "Oh, we have Josh Allen and we have Stephon Diggs and you know, let's not add more good players. We have Von Miller. Let's not add any more good players. We don't want to be too good." No, they go out there and say, Is there a trade that makes sense for us that can make us even better than we are?" And I think that's exactly what you did, Blurpy. I think you agree with that as well, right?
I like that. Yeah.
I mean, and that's why we love Dynasty so much because as a good team, you can kind of look at those teams that are further down in the rankings and go, "Oh, what do they got that I could use to make my first, second, third place team even better?" Oh, they have this old guy that's not going to help them out. Oh, let's make a trade to get that guy on the team. You know what I mean? So uh, we see it all the time. Um, Drew, I do want to get you out of here, but got to before we get out of here, we got to talk about the Buffalo Bills trade. So the Buffalo Bills get Naheem Hines and they give up Zach Moss and a 6th-round pick. How do you feel about that, Drew?
Oh, I'm fine with it. I think Hines has shown he can be a playmaker. So when he needs to be there, I'm not sure what I think as far as will he actually push Singletary for early touches or not. I think he's a great weapon to have on the team. So whether it is Singletary or Hines in the backfield, um, with Josh Allen, I think it keeps things open in the playbook. So I like it for them overall. I don't think Moss gave them that flexibility at all. So I like it. So Moss in the 6, sure, take it.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way. I felt like it was an upgrade, but again, listening to a podcast and someone made a very good point. They said the Bills, this move is a really good move for the Bills because, you know, obviously none of us wish it happens. But if Devin Singletary goes down and let's say you're in the AFC championship game, are you really comfortable with Zach Moss and James Cook being the running attack for your team? No, not really. You probably actually feel kind of crappy about that. At least if Devin Singletary goes down at a clutch moment of your season, you put Naheem Hines out there, and you don't go, we have the second best running back in the league. We fooled you guys. but you have a guy that you're confident can handle the load and be a good player for your team. And that's what you need at that position for the Buffalo Bills. You don't need, you know, you don't need the Tony Pollard, we need a running back to get us 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards, on the ground. No, you need a guy that can play his role in the offense and can be good at it. And that's what Nyheim Hines is. We've seen him when Jonathan Taylor has gone down. No one freaks out. No one goes, "Oh man, we can't do anything in the run game now. We have to abandon it and just throw." No, they're like, "All right, this guy is good. He can handle it. We'll be fine." And I think that's where the Bills made a really good move, because if anything ever happens to Singletary, here comes Hines, and you really don't miss much.
Yep.
So, on that note, Drew, we're out of here. Thank you to everybody in the chat. It was a lot of fun. Great questions. Great talking about these trades. It was a good time. Remember, if you're in the chat, hit subscribe, hit like, leave a comment. We love them all. If you're doing a podcast thing, appreciate you guys too. It's been over an hour. That's a long time to be doing anything, especially listening to two guys just talking about fantasy football. We appreciate that. Remember, if a friend mentioned us and you're listening to us for the first time, don't forget to hit subscribe. Leave a rate and review if your podcast directory allows you to. And Drew, on that note, we are out of here.
Late.